Hello there, kia ora. Had something a bit strange happen yesterday. The video I did yesterday morning, I had to take it down. There was somebody who was in it who requested that we remove it, that it wasn't put online. That's fine, and I just got really busy. I didn't get a chance to go through and re-record anything. So I've got permission for the people who are working in the background here, and I'm going to redo the video slightly different. It gives me a chance to go a little bit more in depth. And I don't have to be interrupted by going to see Tajas. They're so cute. But that's not what this is about. I've been wanting to see Tajas for a while now. One of the things that we do know is that the far-right candidates that are out there, or the people that are helping and supporting them, they're starting to freak out a little bit. They're asking questions like in their own internal chats about how you fight back against woke candidates and woke commentators, like myself, I guess, pushing back on their ideologies and beliefs. And there's a couple of reasons for this. A big one is that it's a really tough thing to be called far-right. Nobody really wants to do that because there's some really horrible connotations that come with it. Or they might not necessarily believe that they are actually far-right in their ideologies. All humans have trouble working out exactly where they sit on the political spectrum. So it could be any one of those. So I thought what we'd do is have a look at how we know that they're freaking out in a little bit more of a general sense. It's not about what we're seeing in their online spaces where we are seeing these freakouts happen. It's about how they react in public that show us that they're really concerned. Because they're trying to downplay exactly what their ideological belief systems are, which means that you need the tools to be able to spot them in the wild, as it were, so you can push back on it or make sure that other voters are aware so people have the most information possible to make the most informed vote. There's a couple of different ways that they do this, like rebranding terms and languages. They're not pushing for xenophobia, quite clearly, or they're not anti-rainbow. They're about keeping things culturally preserved or looking after traditional family values. Keep an eye out for those kind of shifts in vocabulary because that's a really subtle way for them to change things. They also get really uppity when their actions and language echo the same concerns as violent extremists on topics like immigration or globalism. And they argue that terms like far-right is interchangeable with terms like Nazism. Nazism is a very clear, specific ideology that falls within the far-right. And they'll use those sort of associations to try and play the victim, because being the victim is something that makes you much more sympathetic when you're dealing with the wider public. They also often frame their extreme positions within conservative frameworks specifically. Things like, we just want a rates cap with inflation only being 2.5%, when they're aware that this will actually mean cutting essential core services or facilities. Or in the case of this particular Wellington mayoral candidate who's running on a policy of no caps, this kind of comment that he made when he didn't think anybody was around listening to him. Seems like a great stand-up individual to vote for, doesn't it? You'll also come across a bunch of victimhood and persecution narratives where they're the victim of woke ideology, political correctness, while, they're the common sense ones. They'll claim that left-wing positions are trying to destroy a vaguely defined idea of traditional culture and society as a defense for, cultural identity instead of arguing for oppression outright. Nobody wants to argue for oppression outright. And they're going to use levers like economic pain points to claim that they're working for the working class and they're looking at taking on the global elite for the average ratepayer while demanding a more localized approach to reject the idea of global elitism. You'll see that it's what we call moving the Overton window, how the public perceive things. And they try and do this in a gradual way. It's one of the reasons why over the last 3 years, we're seeing groups like Voices for Freedom actually get more and more mainstreamed because they're slowly winning these little battles and we're seeing their positions platformed a little bit more often, which moves the Overton window, which changes the way that the public perceive their views. And that's kind of worrying because it allows them a chance to deal with identity politics while claiming that they're not, and dealing with people's disillusionment with how systems around them work. If you keep an eye out for these things over the next couple of months, you'll start to spot the patterns coming through from the conversations that they'll have in public forums, online, their supporters in online spaces. It's actually one of the reasons why you might be able to see in their own little resident and ratepayer groups that they've set up that they're quite happy to share content from organisations like Reality Check Radio or Challenging Councils. But if they do it in a general public forum, like a local community page, they're going to get pushback on it because New Zealanders keep telling them to go away. and keep telling them they're not interested in these kind of far-right ideologies. But in their own echo chamber, well, they don't hear that all the time. They think they've got the support and the numbers out there, which is why when you do push back, you're going to get jokes, you're going to get people making fun of you, you're going to get tag teams of their groups coming out and going, "Grr, how dare you." It's a really fascinating thing to watch, and if you've got the tools, you know how to handle it. You can also find these things by just Googling, how do you push back against far-right narratives, which is a bit more of a difficult thing to do while I'm here. My God, the wind is shaking. There's something wicked, so I apologize for that. So yeah, know your narratives. Know what the far-right are out there trying to do to try and make sure that the wider public aren't aware of exactly what it is that they're trying to push or the harm that that can cause. Because by making sure everybody is really informed as to what their candidates have to offer, we can make sure that people are making the most informed vote possible when it comes to this year's local body election, which, as I said before, you need to be registered to vote for by August the 1st if you haven't done so already. Head to vote.nz to do that. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you guys all soon.